Good morning, Roundtablers, and welcome to the Monday edition of the Roundtable. My name is Barbie, and my co-host today is the fashionable queen herself, Gianna.
Hi.
Yes, and joining us this morning is our guest, obstetrician and gynecologist, Dr. Michael Abrams. Welcome to the Roundtable, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, we're on live TV now, so you have to behave yourself.
Unfortunately.
Gianna, you know he likes to give trouble, so I tell you what.
I know.
Well, listen, let's get right into the social buzz of the morning. Check this out.
Tia Clayton with a lifetime best 10.86. Sharika Jackson with a season's best 10.87. Now we wait for the times in 4th and 5th. Tia Clayton arrives in a massive way. Brianna Williams, you just can't counter out 11.15. Since Sharika Jackson 10.87, Cheyenne Fraser Price 10.91, Kevin Nelson 11.04, Shashali Forbes 11.09, Natasha Morrison 11.16, Brianna Williams 11.15, and Alana Reed 11.16.
Well, our athletes over the weekend, I mean, they showed up at National Stadium and showed out. Yeah. I, for one, was very, very happy to see that. The embrace between Tia and Tina Clayton actually brought me to tears.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see that. It's really beautiful. I love when them race them one another, you know. Yeah. I don't know if you ever see when they're in a race together, there's nobody else in that race except the two of them. And I think that's absolutely amazing. But I think all in all, I don't think the USA will have a sweep at the Olympics.
No, nothing like what they've been talking about. And they've been chatting a lot in that space, and it's kind of...
Oh, they have.
Well, they always do, though, and I always find it so ridiculous. But I'm glad that, you know, our people sent a strong message this weekend.
On the track.
Yes.
On the track.
To let them know that, listen, Paris is not going to be a walkover.
What do you think? What do you think, Dr. Abrams?
When to give them a run for the money, I don't think it will be a sweep. I doubt it. It should be very competitive. So I'm looking forward to that, definitely. And we have a new crop of youngsters coming up.
Yes, I'm looking forward to the rise. Yeah. That's what I'm looking forward to, is the actual rise as we go forward into the Olympics. Well, guess what, everyone? Up next is a bag of things.
So today's bag of things is my son Lyric's report card. So remember that I am a first-time mom, like out of my body, and so Lyric is too. And you know, you don't really get report cards. Well, I didn't know that they get report. Well, I should have known, because mine always said like talks during rest and breast.
No,
and, yeah,
really?
Talks during rest. Yeah.
I would have never thought that.
And plays during Bible. Like I was like, oh, so bad. But my Lyric is not bad, guys. So his concepts, letters, shapes, numbers. I don't know how much you can see, but if you notice, everything's in the check mark row.
Oh wow, straight A's.
Yes.
Go Lyric, go. Yes. Go Lyric, go.
And it says that he can, tell all of the letters, shapes, colors by name, and that he was introduced to this year. And it says that he's a happy student who lights up the room with his smile.
And doesn't play during rest time.
Oh, thank God.
Wow, well, congratulations to Lyric, but more so congratulations to you and Johnny. Yes, both of you. Yes, his achievements are yours too.
To be honest though, I don't think so. Like I actually don't think so.
So
like
you think he could do it on his own?
I feel like it's all him. I really do. I mean, I would love to take credit. I mean, I had him after all, but truly it's just the kind of person he is. He's very determined. He's always looking to learn. He's always engaged. So I feel like those are all personality traits that are just manifesting this way. And I hope it stays the same. I know that people change throughout their life, but I hope it stays the same.
I'm very glad. While we have something hot coming in, I'm very glad that Dr. Abrams is here so that he can just let you know what I'm going to let you know, which is that Lyric is actually 50% you and 50% him father. Him never born by himself. So wonderful, Gianna. Okay, so our hot topic this morning is definitely a hot topic. It is childhood trauma, the inside story.
I thought you were going to feed me. I thought you were going to give me
what you thought?
I thought it was a pizza thing and you just bring a piece of paper.
More trauma. We actually deal with this 5 days a week, right? We're traumatized by this box.
You received me.
Yeah, very,
You
very
should
much.
enter politics, actually. You do well.
Yeah, I might, you never know.
God.
Yeah, I might just be the minister of food. so childhood trauma, guys, let's get into this, the inside story. So Dr. Abrams, I ran into you, as I often do, at the pharmacy the other day, and you brought this topic up to me and sent me a link.
Yeah.
To a TED Talk. Can you talk to us a little bit about what childhood trauma is and just what the inside story is behind childhood trauma?
The link I sent to you was a TED Talk, and I think everybody should watch this, by an American doctor of Jamaican parentage. Her name is Nadine Burke-Harris. And she gave a talk that literally changed my life in 2016. She came to Jamaica at the University of the West Indies, and she gave a talk on ACEs. I did not know what ACEs are. ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. And she spoke about the first ACE study. There have been several since. The first one was in the 90s in San Diego. They looked at 17,000 participants, and they looked at how childhood trauma affects you over the course of a lifetime. So what they looked at is 10 ACEs in 3 different categories: abuse, neglect, and exposure to dysfunction in the home. Under abuse, they looked at physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Under neglect, they looked at physical and emotional neglect. And on the exposure to dysfunction in the home, they looked at things like exposure to domestic violence, drug abuse, mental illness, having a family member being incarcerated, or divorce or separation. That's 10. Wow. And the higher you score is the shorter your life expectancy is, and the more likely you are to be unwell as an adult, not just mentally, because it's obvious that if you're traumatized as a child, it can have mental effects, but even physically. So for example, by the time your ACE score reaches about 4, your risk of being suicidal is 12 times that of someone whose score is 0, and your cancer risk doubles.
Wow.
By the time you reach an ACE score of about 8, your suicidal risk increases like 20-fold, and your cancer risk triples. So what they find is that normally if you're threatened, the body responds. You have this thing called a fight or flight response. You've heard about the fight or flight response? Yes. So for example, you're a gunshot and somebody bursts in the studio, your heart is going to race because your body responds, and your heart beats fast to pump blood to your muscles. Your adrenaline goes up to make it pump, and it carries blood and oxygen to your muscles to make you fight or run.
Right.
Although some people freeze. And normally after the threat goes away, you go back down to normal. But if you're a kid and every day you're traumatized, it's like you start a car and put a brake on the accelerator and leave and make it just run. After a while, the system kind of literally wears out the child. Wow. And it affects the brain development. And in affecting the development of the child's brain, it also affects the development of multiple systems, such as the endocrine, as a hormone system, the immune system, and these things carry on into adulthood. And that's why many people carry the effects of childhood trauma and they don't even realize it.
So, Gianna, I'm gonna throw this one to you really quickly, because I thought this was very profound when I looked into it, and I was and just listening to the TED Talk itself. When we think about what happens here in Jamaica on a daily basis and the trauma that a lot of these kids are exposed to, in addition to a lot of the ones that Dr. Abrams mentioned. But when I say trauma, I'm talking about even just the violence that they may just run into on the way to school or on the way home or just walking outside. What do you think about that? And do you think that this can actually be almost like a highlight or eye into why society is today, some of the things that we're seeing happening in Jamaica today?
Yeah, well, I think you answered that already. But yes, I think that, they say hurt people, and I feel like this is just an illustration of that. But I feel like, yes, for certain, the violence that we're exposed to, I think, first of all, our kids are very desensitized to all of the ills of society because they're seeing them from a very early age. But also, I think that it's normalized because they are experiencing it at home. I don't know what the statistics are. I'm certain that we're probably doing a lot better than we were because of, like, I know my generation, there's a lot less people who decide to beat their children than before. But there's still a level of violence that takes place. There's still, if your brother hits you, you're going to hit him back. There's no like trying to actually work it out without violence. So those things still exist and they're absorbing them at a young age. So they're perpetuating it because they come out with these ills.
This is definitely it's a heavy topic, but it's a well-needed topic and something that we definitely need to discuss a little bit more. So we will have more Roundtable up after the break. Welcome back to the Roundtable. This morning's topic is childhood trauma, the inside story. Now, two of the things that I'd like to discuss how it can affect, what it affects. One would be communication. Can you talk to us a little bit about how childhood trauma, your ACE score, right, affects communication and how we communicate or respond to communication?
Yeah, trauma affects almost everything, man. Communication is one of them because people have different trauma responses. And I'm glad you brought that up. So for example, and it's important to understand this, to empathize, because everybody has a story. And as Jana says, hurt people. And people respond to stress in different ways. So for example, some people's response, fight or flight response is to fight. So you have some people, I'm sure every workplace will have a spectrum of these personalities. You have some people, they're intolerant of any kind of criticism, any kind. So anything that's going on, they're ready to fight you. So for example, a supervisor may call you up and say, you know, that we're watching you. They will respond by being aggressive. What do you mean? What am I doing? And it's to fight back, right? On the other hand, you have another person whose trauma response is to run. So the boss says, watching you. Okay, I'm gone. And they're gone. There are different kind of trauma responses. And you see this even in relationships. So for example, you're having an intimate relationship with someone and they're very touchy. They're ready to start a fight. The other people, the minute they say any kind of hint of being abandoned, because if you grew up, for example, you saw your father leave and then your mother went to migrate and all of that, you can have serious abandonment issues. And that's why some people ghost people. See in a relationship and it's like, okay, he don't answer him phone, him leaving me, say, guess what? I'm out.
I'm out first.
Block, delete, ghost, done, run. So this can affect, so when you see people behaving like that, it's important to empathize. People ghosting people, suddenly like that is not normal behavior. You know, so, and being aggressive and wanting to fight is not normal either.
Wow.
It's important to empathize, but to protect yourself too. Because you have to look after yourself, and sometimes it would be in your best interest to move out of the spaces of these people. But it's important to empathize though, because a lot of people who behave like this are traumatized. So give an example.
So hold up, before you give me an example, what I want to also talk about is, so I'm listening to you talk about the communication and our responses to communication and how we respond and develop communication. But how does this actually impact our self-esteem? Jana, can you see how this would actually impact someone's self-esteem?
The people ghosting me or
childhood trauma and the things that develop.
So obviously, in order to have high self-esteem, right, you're supposed to have things like autonomy. Your parents should encourage you. There should be the parents, first of all. You should have your parents. So, you know, when you don't have your parents, which in the case of neglect, I believe neglect was one of the ACEs.
Yeah.
You know, there's that. So you don't have a sense of belonging. You don't have a sense of identity because of where you came from. Those things are, you know, so you shake on those things, and then that would obviously shake your self-esteem. But also your self-worth would be affected by the different abuses that take place. So whether it's the emotional or the physical, or what you tell yourself about them, because, you know, you end up conjuring up some sort of whether you're going to excuse it away for your parents or that you deserve it or they convince you that you deserve it. So any of those things will affect how you value yourself, and that will obviously affect your self-esteem and how you eventually deal with people in the world. But you know what I wanted to talk about was one of the markers, I guess, in the ACE score is mental illness. Like if you have to deal with mental illness in the home. Now, something like that is unavoidable, I would imagine, because you can't help if your parents have a mental illness. So you'd automatically get a score for that one. So then how does one like combat that? Is there any studies on that? Like how you actually rise above? Because I mean, I don't know. I would go as far as to say, I don't know that there's anybody in Jamaica that would have a zero.
I don't know if there's anyone in life that would have a zero.
There are people who have zero.
Yeah.
You have people who have zero?
Really?
Wow.
It's a minority of people
in Jamaica?
have zero. I don't know about in Jamaica, but we've done research. I'd have to ask people like Professor Sam Vaughan or Dr. Herbert Gill, who've done research. But there are people who have zero, but they're in a minority, obviously.
Where do they live? On top of a mountain away from everything and everyone?
Most people have at least one, but yeah. They have
not
people
where
like
they live. Tell me, in a cave,
not everybody
away from civilization.
It's because we live in a culture where we beat and we abandon and all that kind of thing doesn't mean that there are people who may not have been exposed to that. There are people who have not been exposed to that. But it's a minority. It's a minority, I'll tell you. But you said something about low self-esteem. All right, sorry, you asked a question about mental health. The effect depends on, there are different factors. The type of mental illness, whether it's controlled or not, and the innate resilience of the child, because people have different levels of resilience, and the presence of a buffer. That's very important. So for example, if you live in an abusive environment, and research has shown that if a child has at least 2 adults who are unrelated, who are trying the child's life to provide nurturing and affirmation, that kind of buffer can help to protect that child.
Right.
So everybody's not going to have the same outcome with the same score, because some kids have buffers, and that's very important.
Right.
Some have none, and those are the vulnerable ones. And I was saying, even when you look at, we can't talk about this in a vacuum, but when you're looking out there at people we see, you'll understand why people have certain types of behaviors. So for example,
I'm glad you brought that up.
So for example, Chris Brown and Rihanna, we know about that stuff. Chris has an anger management issue. He grew up seeing this man beat living daylights out of his mother, blooding her up. He used to wet up himself. He told himself he was going to kill that dude at some point. Rihanna grew up with her father was a crack addict or a coke addict. And that kind of thing sets her up for dysfunctional behavior, and to be drawn to people who are dysfunctional as well. Right. And you can understand why that combination is toxic, why Chris has these issues. R. Kelly's life will make you understand, wow, okay, there was physical trauma, there was sexual trauma from both male and female. He got shot when he was 12. When he was about 8 years old, he caught somebody in the house having sex, this woman, and she gave him a camera and asked him to take pictures of them having sex. Mm-hmm. You fast forward to adulthood, we know what happened. So it's important to understand, and we'll understand what the issues are. We can help to educate people about how to raise kids, how to discipline kids, how not to have kids if you really don't want kids.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You understand? And it's important to let people understand that many of us are trauma survivors and don't even realize we're trauma survivors.
I can believe that.
Because one common thing that people will say in this country when you talk about corporal punishment, and this is not a theory, there are literally hundreds of studies on corporal punishment that tell us it does more harm than good. But many people say, I got beaten as a child and I'm okay. So
no, you're not.
What I often say is, if you're okay, good for you. I can tell people I drink liquor every Friday night and race my friends to Ochi on the highway and never crash. That doesn't mean it's a good thing. Yes. But many people who are not well don't know they are not well.
Yes,
true.
That's the other thing. So we need to educate people about mental health and to destigmatize that as well. So it's important for people to understand how their childhood can affect them.
Yes.
And it's generational, because if you grow up with this dysfunction and you don't get help and you grow up as a tormented adult, you have a kid, that kid grows up in that environment, it affects that child, and the cycle can be perpetuated.
But where do we start?
By having programs like this, by public education, by letting people understand, by telling them to watch Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris's TED Talk on YouTube. That's a good start. But for us to just really understand and not be stubbornly resistant to change. For example, corporal punishment is really not the best thing. but it's to educate people and explain why and explain alternatives, because for some people, that's all they know.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so let's go for a quick break. And when we return, it is time for final thoughts. We will be right back after this. Thanks for staying with us. It is time for our final thoughts. And as usual, what happens in the break is the best part of the conversation. But Doc, it is time for our final thoughts. Can you just tell us your final thoughts?
That childhood trauma is prevalent in this country, and it contributes to the high levels of aggression that we see and violence. And it's important to understand how this impacts us and to revisit practices such as corporal punishment, such as leaving your kids for other people to raise them. Because I find that in Jamaica, it's way too common to hear people say things like, I grew up with my granny or I grew up with my auntie. It's like, okay, so where were your mom and your dad? So to understand the effects of corporal punishment, child neglect, child abandonment, and for people to understand what parenting is. I think we should teach parenting in schools. Mm-hmm. From kids that are young, let them understand the responsibilities of being a parent, and also to destigmatize mental illness. That's very important.
Oh, Gianna, your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are, as usual, be kind. So if you can be kind to your kids, be kind to any children that you see. Let's not perpetuate what we knew and thought to be true. Some of us were beat as a child, but that doesn't mean it was the right thing. If you think you turned out great for it, not everybody turns out great. So maybe try another way. There's lots of different ways. So that's my final thought.
Thank you very much. And my final thoughts is it's very simple for me, and that is what's real to me is real to me. What's real to you is always going to be real to you. You never know what someone is dealing with, what they've been through, and how they got to where they are. And so for that, I'm just going to repeat what Gianna said, which is be kind. Be kind, because you really just never know. Hurt people. So we have to find a way to heal. Right? So that's it for the Roundtable Sunrisers. A special thanks to Dr. Michael Abrams for joining us at the table, right? Listen, it was a pleasure having you here, okay?
One more thing. Can I say one thing? Totally off topic. If anybody sees a video of me promoting some kind of vascular blood clotting stuff, don't buy it. It's a scam. It's some AI-generated deep fake video of me. That's not me.
That's not you.
No, I don't have a British accent.
But this is you.
Yeah, this is me. This is my accent. This is me.
But this is you. Well, listen, everyone, this is absolutely amazing. Thank you very much. Have a great week, everyone. And remember, be good and be on purpose. Thank you for joining us.
Never thought I'd get so far. But I'm standing on the stage and the lights are in my way. Better be alive. One step closer. I'm waiting 'cause I work so hard. And the music keeps on playing and the people they must stay. We are all shouting Every dream conquered is another dream game. I land and I fly again like a jet plane. Now I'm flying high and I got nothing to fear. Victory is knowing that you're already there. Let's stay